Hello, GenderqueerChat. It's Callie. It's Saturday, and we're talking about language. So the topic this week is language, and we've been asked, do you speak a language other than English? And how does that handle gender? And how do you handle gender in that language? I've learned a lot of languages. I've studied a lot of languages, I should say. But I don't know if I've learned a lot of languages. At school I did French for, well, I did it a bit in primary school for a couple of years, and then I did it for 5 years in secondary school. And I have a higher in French, and I won a prize for my French, in fact, in my last year of doing it at school. But I took physics instead in my final year of school. And I've my French is quite rusty now, but when I came to university I studied Latin for 2 years and Greek for 1, which I really enjoyed. So out of all those languages other than English, I think probably my Latin is the best, but of course I don't really, speak it. I can only really read in Latin. There wouldn't be anyone to talk to anyway. But yes, and as such I've never really had to handle gender neutralness in these languages. I know there's gender neutral articles, like neologistic gender neutral articles that people have come up with for French, but I've never really had cause to employ them. And I think it's very interesting. I went to a seminar once where this person talked about the varying uses of, in Romance languages like Italian, Spanish, French, where they have different genders, how people in advertising use that gender. Like sometimes they'll give like an inanimate object that they're advertising masculine qualities, and if it's masculine, and they'll give another object which is feminine in the language, sort of female qualities, which is interesting. But I don't think that it's too, and the conclusion of that seminar was that this happens sometimes, but it's not too kind of connected to social gender, human gender. There isn't that big of a connection. Just because something's grammatically feminine doesn't mean you think of it as a feminine thing. And in Latin, one of the words for wife is neuter, rather, because Latin and Greek have 3 genders each. They have masculine, feminine, neuter. But that being said, there is always kind of crossover of grammatical gender and social gender feeding into one another. And Ben Jonson wrote a play Epicene, and Epicene which refers to, is an odd title for a play, but it probably refers to, there's a sort of boy in the play who is kind of masculine and feminine, because that's how young boys were viewed in the time that Ben Jonson was writing, and he wrote this play Epicene, and Epicene is a grammatical term, and it means a noun that can be both masculine and feminine. So that kind of, the metaphor, it goes back and forth. And I was talking to someone once who had studied Latin, and he was telling me, and this was when I was still taking Latin, which I don't do anymore, and he said that Latin is the most perfect language there has ever been. Just really balls. But he said it was the most perfect language there has ever been, except for gender. The gender of Latin is the only imperfect thing. And I've also read about, I should really have a bibliography for this video of all the essays I'm sort of randomly paraphrasing and probably completely misappropriating, but I read another thing which was about how why gender is useful, why so many languages have gender, and one of the reasons why it's useful is that when you're talking about different objects, it can be quite useful if one of the objects you're talking about is masculine and one is feminine, then you don't have to. Then when you're using your pronouns, you're less likely to get pronouns confused. So if I said I walked into the room where there was a chair and a table, and I put my jacket down on it, then you wouldn't know if I put my jacket down on the chair or the table. But if I was speaking a language where chair is masculine and table is feminine, then you would know. But obviously, you could have a situation where both chair and table are feminine, or both chair and table are masculine or neuter, and so that's not necessarily very helpful. But that was just one suggestion of why I do it. And in fact, there are some languages, and I think I'm right in saying, although don't quote me on this, that Basque has pronouns where the first thing you mention is one pronoun and the second thing you mention in the sentence or whatever is the second pronoun. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's why they do it. Don't know. But I don't think there's something intrinsically having to do with women about things that are about, say, tables, which in French are la table is feminine. But it's it's a funny old one. And the other language I had a bit of a go at was Gaelic, which is the native language of the north and west of Scotland. And I can say a few things in Gaelic, like Kimina how is how are you, and Hami Guma Taplat Kimina how heen is I'm very well, thank you. How are you? And Hami, my favourite thing to say in Gaelic is Hami skiri ku, which means I'm dog tired, or I'm tired like a dog, very tired. Gaelic is a fun language, but it also has gender, and it doesn't even have an it pronoun, so a language for a pronoun for an object. It just has I, which is the masculine pronoun, and A, which is the feminine pronoun. So there you go. So yeah, it's very widespread, especially in Indo-European languages. But surprisingly, in non-Indo-European languages, they tend not to make the distinction. Finnish doesn't make a distinction. Finnish just has the one pronoun. Georgian doesn't make the distinction either. I had a bit of a crack at learning Georgian as well. I just have these. The reason for Georgian was because I had an ambition to learn an agglutinative language, and a language, where it's just because I'm a bit of a language geek, and I had a friend who wanted to learn Georgian as well, and it's got lots of suffixes and things like that. It was lots of fun, or I thought so anyway. But I hardly remember any of my Georgian. I think if I were speaking a language, I would try and find gender neutral options the way I do in English, that even when I know people's gender, I try and use gender neutral options. Even if I do use he and she, I try to, say things like rather than saying he's a very interesting man, say he's a very interesting person, just because it's very limiting. Even if you think you know that someone will always think of themselves and refer to themselves as a man, it can be very limiting. So I think. So I think that's all I've got to say for this week. But it's a jolly interesting topic, and I've enjoyed hearing what other people have to say on it. Okay, bye.